A man on an impossible mission heads to a government base that is under absolute surveillance, with a plan that is too crazy to work. One person made his way into Area 51, but whether he found at least something to evade the guards and cameras or whether he was detained and driven away with nothing, today we will find out about it. Area 51 is known for being a very secret, highly guarded and completely impenetrable base of government operations, which many have tried to infiltrate and of course to no avail. What most people don't know is that there was one man who was determined to go on a mission to find the answers, and he actually managed to get them and go undetected for 7 days in a heavily monitored government base. His story is full of cunning and testing his survival skills. And lucky for us, he documented the entire trip in a self-titled series published in the Las Vegas Sun. We'll now delve into the incredible journey of Jerry Freeman, an archaeologist and explorer who didn't take no for an answer when it came to uncovering the truth. Shortly before leaving, he explained his motivation, which made him go on such a dangerous journey. The siren song is deafening, I'm struck by the forbidden fruit. Archaeologist and anthropologist Jerry Freeman from California was 55 years old in April 1997 when he decided to make an unauthorized crossing through restricted Area 51. He was an experienced adventurer, someone who always brought his projects to completion with passion. His latest project was the most ambitious of them all. He wanted to follow a specific route in Nevada to find never-before-seen clues that could reveal important details about history. The only problem was that the trek required him to cross the forbidden territory of Area 51, but that didn't stop him. In preparation for the trip, Freeman contacted the Las Vegas Sun, thinking that if his plan was discovered by the authorities, he would definitely be arrested. So he decided to talk to a trusted but neutral third party, so that someone officially knows where he was and why he went. As an experienced investigator, it's possible that Freeman was simply taking security measures that ensured that search parties would come looking for him if he didn't return. But perhaps part of his motivation was a completely different goal. Freeman boldly announced his outlandish plan. "I want the Air Force to know that there is nothing sinister about what I do," he said for the newspaper. "I am not interested in the military or their technology, I am interested in the exceptional history and culture of this place and its artifact. I am an archaeologist. That's all I want." But it was not clear what forced Freeman to take part in such a risky mission. The truth is that the information he was looking for was an exceptional treasure that could only be found in the depths of Area 51, but his fascination did not arise from a desire to catch a UFO or meet a real alien. Rather, it was associated with an infamous event that occurred back in 1849, the passage of the famous Valley of Death. A tale that has gone down in history because of the incredible resilience of the group members who came together to overcome the inexorable obstacles along the way. In a recorded segment from a radio show hosted by Art Bell in the late 90s, Freeman himself explains how, for some reason, old American history drove him to infiltrate Area 51. The radio program was open to Area 51 personnel, but Freeman called anyway to share his impressive experience. "I'm an archaeologist, I slipped into Area 51 last year, I hiked 100 miles and was there for a week, went so far I was able to see things from a different perspective. I will say that it was the most stunning thing I have ever done. For some reason I decided to go there as an archaeologist, which aroused interest in Area 51. I have been following the Death Valley story about a group of lost people in 1849. Are you joking? No, the group took a shortcut. As it turned out, it went through some areas into Area 51. So you just followed their trail and the trail led through the areas into Area 51? Right. But these people made the arduous journey across America in a van, leaving the eastern part of the United States. They pursued the tantalizing promise of prosperity that the California gold rush offered. And you probably know the tragic story of Donner's Party, who were trapped in a snowstorm in the mountains. After trying to take a shortcut, they were forced to resort to cannibalism after the members began to die due to the harsh conditions and lack of supplies. The people in 1849, who made the trip just 3 years after the 1846 donor group, took note of the details of this story and avoided the same mistakes. But ironically, although they stayed away from the snowy peaks, these travelers too were lost, disoriented, and struggling to survive, this time under the hot desert sun. The story goes that the group, making their way west, reached the ridge too late to cross it safely. And then the tempting alternative option of crossing the zone was chosen. There were rumors that some members of the group were choosing to take the old route around the southern edge of the Sierra, which would lead to warmer weather, more stable terrain and a supposedly safer route for travel even in the coming winter. The group, led by experienced guide Jefferson Hunt, decided not to follow the old proven path. Khan decided to choose an unfamiliar path. It was a poorly thought out choice, because if the donor group taught anything, it was that you should always choose the proven path. When the group was unable to find water along this new trail, they were forced to return to the original plan, but this foolish risk was a costly mistake and they lost 7 days and valuable supplies in the process. After this, conflicting opinions and claims only increased in the group. As a result, the journey led to the fact that they separated, and those who broke away into Hunt's groups went along a very beautiful route and soon realized that they were not mistaken. They came face to face with a stunning canyon that was impossible to cross by wagon. Although most were disheartened by this outcome, a select few decided to continue. But these guys' strong spirit paid off, and after several days of traveling, they found a way around the canyon. Soon the path led them to the area of Poppy Lake, a landmark located in the territory of the current Area 51. Here another dispute arose. The travelers were desperate for water. One group proposed a plan to go south to the snowy mountain where the ground is not so dry, but the other group did not agree. They stuck firmly to the original plan, not wanting to do any more sabotage. But even after deciding to go their separate ways, fate would have it that the two groups eventually met again on Christmas Eve 1849 and continued on a journey together that led them to what is now Death Valley. Although the exhausted people found temporary relief and were able to satisfy some needs, the tired groups and their exhausted animals were in bad shape. They became desperate and dispersed again. Some abandoned the wagon. They had already experienced so much grief that it was impossible to carry all the things so far. Instead they left them behind in the desert and continued on foot. They may have been on their last legs, but this group was able to successfully complete the journey and finally put an end to their days on the road. The rest were less fortunate. After failing to cross the formidable mountain range, the last formidable barrier to civilization, they were forced to turn back and remain in the valley, while the two men were trusted to continue forward and provide supplies to the abandoned people. After a month and 300 miles of walking, the heroes returned to their waiting comrades. The two saviors returned to find the situation much worse than they had expected. Most were losing patience or perhaps they had given up hope that the two scouts would return. Many had already left by the time the messengers returned. In the end they were saved. In total, 13 travelers are reported to have died taking this route, which added a month to their journey. As they left the cruel desert that had brought so much suffering, one of the group said goodbye to the Valley of Death. So this infamous place, one of the hottest places on earth, got its scary names. And all of this inspired Freeman. It's part of our American heritage, Freeman said. I believe that I have the right to see this. It was recorded in the journals that they made 7 inscriptions along the way to mark their passage. His goal was to find the last inscription written in 1849 by one of the travelers. It is said that it is located on the wall of Nye Canyon. Moreover, Freeman wanted to look at the dry Lake Papusa with his own eyes, since it was the last place where the group was before their inevitable split. He later wrote, "The catch of the lake and canyon is that it is not deep inside the most guarded real estate on Earth. Dreamland as it is known only to military pilots of Area 51, legions of UFO lovers." Freeman was familiar with the group's travel route, having led 5 people along the original 49 route a year earlier. They were on the campaign for a total of 32 days. The inspired team even managed to find several inscriptions, all but one. The seventh inscription, in the form of a photograph, seemed to exist only in books, along with an account of its supposed location. Freeman could not calm down until his dream of seeing her was fulfilled. He once said that when you start a project, you don't finish it because if you leave gaps in it, you won't get a sense of satisfaction. But the authorities had different opinions when it came to the dangerous trip. The National Park Service and land managers were supportive of Freeman's lofty goals. The Department of Energy kindly agreed, at the request of the researcher, to provide controlled access to certain parts of Area 51 that were an integral part of the expedition. The U.S. Air Force, the most influential organization, quickly gave the go-ahead for the last group expedition. She refused to give permission for this single one. And I'm pleased to work with the Air Force. They made sure my team got access to several archaeological sites for several years. Lake Papizi alone is worth something. It is critically important from an archaeological point of view, because it was the last place where the group was together in 1949, and then they went different ways in an attempt to escape from the desert. According to the newspaper, the Air Force ignores and categorically rejects all efforts by Freeman and his supporters to gain limited access to the military base. The Air Force stated that from now on it will not allow anyone to enter the territory. Freeman later said in retrospect that he had endured all the objections and remained calm, that he was so naive in hoping that at some point the base commander would call me and tell me, "Hey Jerry, we have some free time on such and such a day. Come to the gate and our bases and archaeologists will guide you through the day and see if we can find this inscription. Your research is admirable, glad we were able to help you." Obviously, this ideal scenario would never happen. Well, enough of the fantasies, he thought in his series of articles. Now the choice is really limited, such as forgetting this important part, settling for desk research, or committing an unimaginable illegal entry. Freeman chose the latter. The Air Force's refusal did not stop him and he decided to go alone or with a group. You were denied permission several times and then at some point you decided to screw them and went anyway. I acted unreasonably, I admit it, but I am not sorry that I did it. As detailed in a series of Las Vegas Sun articles, his first entry was dated Tuesday evening, April 22, 1997. Freeman starts. I stood next to the old metal barriers. An hour earlier, my brother's car had disappeared down a deserted trail. After a quick handshake, Doyle left. Dusk was close and it was stupid to shine headlights so close to the border. I convinced myself that I was just waiting for the moon to rise higher so I could set off, but in reality I was just afraid. The enormity of what I was prepared to do undermined my childhood. Finally, taking a deep breath, I stepped over the barrier into the restricted area. Freeman wrote. I left my phone camera on in case I got arrested. I would broadcast my position and would not resist arrest. Reading these memoirs, we realize that Freeman knew what he was signing up for from the very beginning and was fully prepared to face the consequences. He took precautions as he had heard stories of people entering Area 51 who never returned. He says that his fear dissipated as he walked through the soothing desert, and that his first goal was to find a source of water. As Freeman began climbing the steep slope of Skull Mountain on the other side of the slope in the pre-dawn hours, he saw something strange. I stopped dead in my tracks. All over the valley lay an eerie strange structure. Slipping through the cover of nearby cacti, Freeman grabbed his binoculars and began to rack his brains, thinking that he had made some mistake or miscalculation and this had led him to that huge object. But he became horrified when he realized that he was really in the right place. I called this place the City of the Dead because it seemed abandoned and initially only saw strange structures and portable trailers. The whole valley was filled with them. Freeman accepted reality. The huge object he saw was littered with guards and occupied by transport. It looked like a huge blockade, with a source of clean water standing between it. At a loss as to how to continue, Freeman tried to sleep in the foliage. I woke up a few hours later to the loud whirring of helicopter blades, and Freeman developed his ingenious plan. To go through all this under the cover of darkness, he quickly decided that this was the fastest and therefore the only way. The most effective way was a straight line, but he soon encountered reality. What would have been a 45-minute walk, he wrote, would have been a 5-hour ordeal of heartbreaking waiting. I felt like a bad actor in a prison break movie. Armed guards were everywhere. I held my breath as the powerful lights came on. They suspected my presence. Freeman moved slowly through the valley swarming with guards. He noticed a particularly heavily guarded building. He wrote that it looked like a built wall. There was one window, it was too high and emitted a shining pulsating glow. But Freeman did not have time to inspect the building, and this was not his goal. He continued on his way, evading the detection of a security vehicle, and was eventually forced to walk along a paved road to reach a water source. He walked straight to the barricade blocking the entrance at the northern end of the complex and saw a large generator. Freeman wrote. It glowed like a Christmas tree and was surrounded by a cacophonic noise that grew louder. The noise came from the generator, a heavy gasoline behemoth on wheels. Carefully dodging the strobe lights, Freeman moved prone when they threatened to give him away and ran forward as fast as he could when they momentarily turned away. He stopped to catch his breath and saw a sign. Entry to the territory is prohibited, violators will be prosecuted. The zone prohibits the use of firearms, cameras, phones or binoculars. Controlled by LANL Corporation. It was only after he returned home that Freeman made the shocking connection. LANL stood for Los Alamos Nishanov Laboratories Limited. Freeman wrote. These are the people who gave us the beginning of all state secrets. For example, the Manhattan Project, which developed the atomic bomb. I wondered what these guys were working on now. It was 3 o'clock on a Thursday morning when Freeman finally managed to find refuge in the same old miner's cabin that saved the lives of the Death Valley Group in '49. He reached the water source after a night's rest and filled his canteens. Although he planned that he would only walk at night, Freeman was behind schedule and therefore he walked with anxiety in full visibility, fearing that in such a light he would definitely be noticed. Passing a sign that said, "Keep out of the crater danger zone," Freeman realized he had arrived at the site of an old atomic test. Very strange experiments were carried out here. He hurried to pass through this treacherous place, because it could drag him underground, it seemed straight into hell. The only temporary relief was that there would be no guards in this dangerous, very dangerous place. Seeing an area without vegetation, Freeman decided to throw stones into the center. As expected, they disappeared without a trace. Thus his third day in Area 51 came to an end. Freeman found a place to spend the night. It was a ship in the middle of the desert. He guessed that it was a trawler for atomic destruction and damage analysis, but it was abandoned for unknown reasons. On Friday, Freeman ventured into territory scarier than he left behind. This is the bombing of an artillery range. He wrote, I feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. This was the dark side of the moon. Or as one government archaeologist told me in confidence, the black hole. Freeman reveals that this area saw the creation of the supersonic Aurora fighter and the legendary collection of alien spacecraft that is kept under Papoose Lake. And also sensors that can detect an intruder, and if the offender is stupid enough to continue on his way, then most likely he will quickly get rid of him. Freeman soon realized that the phone stopped working in certain places. But if you climbed high enough, he could send short cryptic texts in correspondence with the newspaper, letting them know the status of the mission. Freeman said many later asked why authorities couldn't track his phone. But the confused movements made surveillance unlikely, so Freeman used a rope to climb a nearby rock and was finally able to contact his friends. He told Doyle, his brother, who was determined to pick him up after the hike. If I don't get there by midnight 30, I probably won't go out. I'm either lost, injured, captured, or dead. He called his wife Donna to tell her he loved her. He then told reporters Ze-san. Jerry is in the mall looking for jewelry. This is the code for the 1849 inscription. With water levels below 50, keep the faith. Freeman then camped for the night on a precarious, narrow ledge on a high peak. Most of the free articles are devoted to Freeman's own thoughts, about the motivation for his mission, why he risked everything to come here. He writes how ironic it is that 150 years after 1849, I am desperately avoiding my country's military just to see the places where people work so bravely. These were not military men, these were not mountaineers, they were people just like you and me, dreaming of a better life for their loved ones. After a while, he reached his destination, Lake Papoose, which he called the most limited place for entertainment on Earth. Since aliens were in short supply here, Freeman could only see a helicopter, which was driving tourists out of the territory in the pitch-black nights while it remained undetected. Looking at the lake, Freeman felt respect for the struggle of the losing players in this very place. He explained that the innocuous lake bed below me was key to their survival after traveling nearly 2,000 miles. 100 men, women, and children gathered here, but after disputes their cohesion was destroyed. The group that remained carved a date into the wall of Nye Canyon as a sign of their presence there. Freeman moved forward with unrelenting hope, but unfortunately, the search for the date of the inscription was completely fruitless. Scratching the endless canyon walls for one tiny, presumably faded inscription was like trying to find a needle in a haystack. He thought that if the water supply had not run out, he might have been able to stay another day and try his luck in finding the artifact. But Freeman was an experienced hiker, and as much as he wanted to throw caution to the wind and move on, he knew it was time to make the long return trip. However, he did not leave empty-handed. He found one important relic, an ox horseshoe. As far as Freeman knows, only in 49 were oxen driven through Nye Canyon. I'm sorry I didn't find the inscription, but I did find evidence about the 1849 travelers. I was within a mile of Papoose Lake. There is no known photo of Papoose Lake now, but I took a few. Did you have a camera with you? Yes, I got great color photographs of this place. And what did you do with these photographs? I haven't done anything with them yet, but I have a book proposal from the Jeff Foreman Agency in New York. The book will be called Forbidden Journeys and I hope to include these photographs. But I won't do this until I'm sure that what I show won't jeopardize national security. Freeman had little time to celebrate the find, as he was 22 miles from the refuge that would provide him with water and shelter. Freeman began to worry. He had run out of water and his phone battery was dying. Then he reluctantly decided to throw in his $200 binoculars, his phone, his gear and kitchen utensils, extra clothes and provisions, and prepared for an easy, quick trip. Once the friendly shelter of darkness greeted him, withered and very scared of dying from dehydration, Freeman stopped at the Department of Atomic Waste, a warehouse where he found a hose on the side of a building and drank to his heart's content. Later noting how strong the thirst was, he gave the example of a quote Juliet Breyer from the 49 group once said. Many times I felt that I would faint, that if my strength went now, I would fall to my knees. The boys asked for water, but there was not a drop. At night I knelt down and looked at the tracks of the oxen, who also stumbled from exhaustion. Compared to this misery, Freeman laughed at his own experience. He didn't seem to pay much attention to the fact that he was drinking water from a hose at a nuclear waste facility. But future theorists have taken note of this detail, which is called as a possible reason for Freeman's health problems on the road, his final moments inside Area 51 being key. He knew he couldn't afford to let his guard down, not when he'd gotten this far undetected. The border of a government base is not a place to relax. Freeman wrote, 200 yards left. I crawled and crawled, stopping only when the cars could notice me. I ran up the hill without looking back and rushed over the ridge. I looked over the ground and saw a white car. It was Doyle. It was the end of travel. The brothers were then reunited and walked in silence to the waiting car until they were on safe ground. After a period of stern silence, Freeman asked, "Was it a mistake, Doyle?" Raising the flask into the air, Doyle triumphantly replied, "It wasn't a mistake. I'm damned mad at you, but I'm not going to accept any claim that it was in vain." And this marked the end of Freeman's mission. In his passionate memoir, Freeman remarked, "If I live to be 100 years old, I will never forget how my pulse beats in the dark, what it is like to play hide and seek with ghostly people who carry military weapons." But sadly, the world lost a free-spirited, kind-hearted man in 2001 when prostate cancer took Freeman. During his lifetime, Freeman said that he did not plan to go public with the story for fear of imprisonment, especially since he never found the last inscription of 1949. After consulting with lawyers, he began to speak more freely about his experience and shared that the military was furious that someone had entered the territory without authorization. Going back to the recording of the radio show, we found a very interesting piece that allows us to understand more about what sensitive information Freeman may have observed in Area 51. Describe specifically what is in the photographs. This is a great, clear photo of Pauquets Lake taken during daylight hours. I had powerful binoculars, the area looked like a dry lake and nothing else. But at night it was a completely different story. What did you see? I could clearly see the security lights around the perimeter and could see the lights going on and off in the center of the lake. I was eating and felt vibrations. The sand began to slowly slide, and I thought it was an earthquake. And later I realized, no, this is not an earthquake. This lasted maybe about 2 minutes. It's something they're testing right underground. I felt the vibration completely from the entire lake. So how much time did you spend in Area 51? I was there for a week. Freeman hoped that his trip to the area would spark an interest in American history among others. Knowing that he would be banned from working after his story became public, Freeman gave hope to another archaeologist and historian. They continue to work to find the seventh and final inscription. Although, perhaps, with the permission of Area 51.